Hi, this is the video for Daf Shevui Masechet Megillah, page 22. I want to go over today both the way that we do the reading for the Torah reading for Rosh Chodesh, and a little bit of a difficulty raised on that by one of the Rishonim, by the Ramban. As a reminder, what are the rules that we need to follow in order for the Torah reading to be divided successfully? You shouldn't begin a parsha and read less than 3 psukim. Right, a parsha is the way that they used to divide things up before they had the psukim, before they had the verses that we have today. Nor should a person finish an aliyah leaving less than 3 in that parsha because of the people who are coming in and going out. So the way that we read it today is the first reader reads verses 1 through 3. The second reader goes back. The halacha is that we see on this page, doleg. He goes back and he reads the same verse 3 over again. He reads verses 3 through 5, which is the end of the first paragraph, I believe, right? And the second one reads verses 6 through 10. That's the end of the second paragraph. And the third one reads verses 6 through 10. And the fourth one reads 11 through 15, which is all of the third paragraph. Okay? So in other words, we skip backwards between the first aliyah and the second aliyah. The first person reading verses 1 through 3, and the second person reading 3 through 5. Right? So the Ramban asks a kasha, right? And it's a very good difficulty that he raises on this Gemara. The first person reads 1 through 3, not a problem. Right? That's the entire paragraph. The second person goes back and begins with verse 3 and reads verses 3 through 5, thereby leaving 3 verses for the third reader to read in the second paragraph. The problem is, what if a person comes in after the first aliyah is done and hears the second oleh, the second person reading, beginning with verse 3? What's he going to think? He's going to think that the first reader read verses 1 and 2, and he's going to make that mistake that the Gemara seems to want to avoid, letting people think that you can read less than 2 psukim in a parsha. And so the Ramban says, look, by this that we did this skipping around, we didn't need to do that at all in the reading for the Rosh Chodesh. There are enough verses, there are 15 verses here, there are enough verses in the Torah reading that we could divide them into 4 readings, and we could skip having to read any verse twice, which is the problem that the Gemara brought up. Now this is different than the Ma'amad, that priestly reading that the Gemara also talks about, where in the first day of the reading there are only 8 verses. Dividing those up into 3 aliyot is impossible. You have to read 1 verse twice or split it, right? But in this case, it's not impossible at all. We could just leave it as it is. And indeed, the Ramban says that's what we're supposed to do. Later on, the Gaon Mivilna, the Gra, agrees with the Ramban and basically says, when it comes to Rosh Chodesh, we should just read without any skipping backwards. The problem was the minhag had already happened of the skipping. For various reasons, that minhag, based on our Gemara, had become entrenched. Right? Even though, what's interesting, the Gemara really only directly says that we're supposed to read a verse twice with regard to the Ma'amad, to this priestly reading that I talked about in the Gemara. The Gemara doesn't exactly say that we're supposed to do that with Rosh Chodesh, but many of the Rishonim read that Gemara that says that we do read the verse twice in reference to Rosh Chodesh. The custom became entrenched, and even though that custom really doesn't seem to make any sense, once the custom was in place, it was very hard to uproot. And to this day, even though it causes the person who comes in after the first aliyah might think that the first aliyah was only 2 psukim, that ends up the way that we do it. So next time you're on Rosh Chodesh, pay attention to the weird way that Rosh Chodesh Torah reading is done. After you've learned this Gemara, you should be able to understand why.